to also show us some pivot tables, tricks, and tips. So, as usual, the Excel learning community is hosted by UrBizEdge, and UrBizEdge is a registered Excel consulting and financial modeling and enterprise solution firm in Nigeria. And this are our training calendar for this month. Okay, so I introduce David. So David is an MVP. He's also the founder of Excel Joint Consult. He's also very highly skilled in Excel, Power BI, SQL, Tableau. He's also a speaker, a trainer, an author, blogger, and you can also find him giving support in the Microsoft tech community. So, hello, David.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, nice to have. Okay, can I take over?
Yes, you can take over.
Okay, yeah, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are from different parts of the world. My name is Abiola David. I'm the founder of Excel Jet Consult. I'm an Excel trainer, and I do Power BI, SQL, and Tableau. So I'm so happy to be part of this meeting for today, and I hope we have a lot of things to cover as we proceed in this presentation. Now, without wasting much of our time, let me go straight to what I have for us. So just a moment, let me just display what I have. Okay. Okay, so as I've said, I'm one of the Excel MVPs from Nigeria, and the boss, Mr. Mike, happens to be perhaps the first Microsoft Excel MVP in the whole of Africa, and we are in step of this great man of God who paved the way for us who are just coming up. All right, so let me just show us some of the things I'm going to cover. Now, we all know that the Lambda functions, the helper functions rather, they were released on the 26th of July by the Microsoft Excel team. And the reason why these helper functions were released is because we need to use them in combination with the Lambda function. So we're going to see how to use 6 of the 7 new Lambda helper functions in this presentation. And I hope we're going to have so many things to talk about. All right, so without wasting much of our time, let me proceed to the first presentation I have here. Now, I want to look at how to use the by-col, that's the by-column and the by-row function. Now, based on what we have here, let me just show you a moment. Let me show you what we have in the okay. Now we have, okay, let me just a moment.
Geology teacher. Okay, a line, geology computer.
Okay, so we can see this. Hi. So we can see these are some of the functions. We have the by-col, that is the by-column, the by-row, the scan, reduce, map, make array, and also we have the is omitted helper functions. Now let's say, for example, what the by-column does. By definition, it applies a lambda to each column and returns an array of the result. For example, if the original array is 3 columns, the return array is 3 columns by 1 row. Now, this is the syntax. We have the by-col, the array, that is the array to be separated by a column, and then we throw in the lambda function, and then we provide the parameters, and the lambda function flows into the array and delivered the output, the final result. The same thing with the by row. This is just for the rows, and this is for the columns. Now we also have the scan function, which by definition scans an array by applying a lambda to each value and returns an array that has each intermediate value. Now I'm going to be showing you how to use each of these functions as we proceed. Now let's come back to our Excel workbook. So let me just swipe over to the Excel file. Okay, now let's consider this example. We have this, sales data. Now, officially in an Excel table, because I love to work with Excel table. It allows you to work more efficiently and more faster. So it's quite an handy tool for me. Now we have this data showing dates, payment method, brand, and the sales amount. Now let's just quickly run a cross-tab report that's going to display the total sales for bike and the payment method, that is FasterPay, and then we copy the formula down. So we have the brand in each of the rows and the payment method in each of the columns. Now let's quickly do that. Equal sign. I'm going to use the traditional SUMIF function. The SUMIF function requires the sum range. So we give this range that contains the numeric value we want to sum based on the criteria that we're going to give, comma. The criteria range 1 is good at dealing with this brand column. So I'm going to select this brand in column C, the entire column, the many side. And for the criteria 1, now I can actually select this entire array, and we have what's called the hash or the pound sign. So we are actually giving the entire array the values in this list. So we don't need to do partial locking like the mixed cell reference that we are used to in the traditional SUMIF function. So it's going to be F2, and we have the pound sign, then comma, and the criteria range 2 is going to be the payment method many side in our data set, comma, and the criteria 2 is going to be. You can hold down the shift key and press the hash sign on your keyboard, and that's select the entire range. Close the SUMIF, and that's all. We don't need to lock any column or any rows. In this case, just Control Enter, and we have the final results for the brand and the payment method. Now let's see the by call, that's the by column Lambda helper function. Now, in the past, if you want to do grand total, for instance, you can just select this kind of, cells and do Alt equal sign, the auto sum shortcut. But now we have a worksheet function that does that for us. So we can actually deploy equal sign and type in by call, because we are dealing with each of the columns now. So we have to use the by call. Now the by call applies a Lambda function to each column and returns an array of results. Now the by call requires the array that we want to return, that the Lambda function will flow into and return the corresponding results based on the parameters and the function that we're going to use inside the. Now for the array, I'm going to select this single value. Now remember, these are field ranges, okay? So this is where the formula actually starts from G2, and you can hold the shift key and the pound sign, and that's select the entire array, comma. Now for the function argument of the by call function, I'm going to use the Lambda function inside that. And for the Lambda function, we need to define a parameter that we're going to pass into the sum aggregate function. So we can actually use a simple value such as A or B or whatever you want. That's fine. Now, the parameter is A in this case, comma. And then for my cat, I'm going to use the sum aggregate function, and the sum requires the number 1. Now I need to pass in this parameter we define into the sum function, which is going to flow into this array and deliver the sum for each of the columns. So it's going to be A inside the sum function. Then we can close up the sum and also the Lambda function, and finally the by call function. And that's all we need to do. We can actually press F9 to see what is going to be calculating. So we can actually see the total for each of the respective columns. We can Control Enter, and the result spills, okay, across. So this is the total for the FasterPay, total for the MasterCard, and so on. So this is how to use the by call Lambda helper function. Now the same thing applies to the by row. We want to actually add up we want to total each of the rows for bike, for BMW, for Ford, and so on. Now to do that, we're going to use the by row function. Same thing, we need the array that we want to return, hold the shift key and press the pound sign, and that's select the entire array. So we do not need to copy down the formula because this formula is going to spill to all the rows, okay? It's going to spill to row 2, 3, to row number 13. Now, comma. For the function, I'm going to throw in the lambda function, and then we need like a parameter. Now, one thing that is interesting about using parameter in Excel is that we can predefine. So I'm going to use the same parameter A to simplify the whole thing, comma. In this my lambda formula, I'm going to use the sum aggregate function again. Then we can pass in the parameter, and the parameter will flow this into this array, each of the elements in this array, and then deliver the total for each of the rows. And we can close off the lambda and that's all. Control enter. So we have the total for each of the row. Now you may want to verify whether this is actually correct or not. Now let's verify this row. For instance, now when I selected this entire row, in the status bar we have 295 million, 217,000 plus, and that's exactly what we have here. 295 million, 217,000 plus. So that's how to use the by rule in combination with lambda and the sum aggregate function. Now let's assume we want to extract the second largest value in each of the columns and the rows. Now, if let's say we want to extract the first largest, we can actually use the max function rather inside the lambda function. But because we are interested in the second largest value, so that renders max function inefficient to perform this operation. So let's see the kind of function we're going to use inside the lambda function. Equal sign again. Okay, let me just copy this result. Control C, escape. So that we don't have to redo that again. Now, so let's use the by call to return or to extract the second largest values in each of the columns. So equal sign by call. And again, we give this value in cell G18, hold down the shift key and press the pound sign or the hash key on your keyboard, comma. And for the function, I'm going to throw in the lambda function. And again, I'm going to use a parameter, comma. Now, because I can't use max for this kind of operation, I need to throw in the large function. Now, the large function by definition returns largest value in the data set, okay? So for the large function, it requires the array. So the array is going to be the defined parameter. So I'm going to pass that into the large. And for the k, which is the constant, now I'm not going to put in 2 as a value because we need the second largest. So just type in 2, then we can close off the large, lambda, and the by call, and that's all. Control enter. Now let's select this entire data set first. Now you can see in the status bar, the max, that is the maximum value, is 39,773 plus, and which now the second largest is obviously this $35,207,000, and that's exactly what we have here. Okay, so this is how to use the large function to extract second largest. You can even do third largest, fourth largest, and so on. This is how to do it for the column. Now let's do the same thing for the rows. Equal sign by row. Now the array remains the same. We give the value inside G18 and apply the pound sign, comma, lambda, and then we'll define the lambda parameter. Throw in the large function, and then we pass in the parameter, comma, and we want to return the second largest. Close off the whole thing. Control enter. That worked pretty fine. So these are actually basic. This is more of a basic thing that we can use the by call and the by row lambda echo functions to do in Excel. Now let's go to something more interesting and more technical. Now let's move to the scan and the reduce functions. Now, the scan function, let's see what it does. By definition, scans an array by applying a lambda function to each value and returns an array that has each value. Now, let's see in this scenario, excuse me, let's press escape. Okay, now let me just extract all this gear from this main side, okay? And to do that, I'm going to use the sort and the unique dynamic array functions. Now, for the array, I want to return this entire, year, and they want to sort it, the unique. Then we can close off the unique and the sort function, and that gave us the year, that is year 2020 to year 2000 to 2020. Now, let's perform a quick total using the sum function, sum ifs. Now, for the sum ifs, we need the sum range, comma, and the criteria range one is going to be the many side. And then we can give this value. Then we can even do the entire speed range, but that's going to cause problem for a function. So I'm going to just use the value in cell F4 only, not using the pound sign. So it doesn't cause problem for me. Then we can close up the sum ifs, control enter, and then send out the report. Now I have this little data validation here, or I've deleted it. Okay, no problem. Now let's say we want to calculate the percentage of grand total using the scan function. We can actually do that effortlessly. And let's see, equal sign, scan. Now the scan in this case requires an initial value and also the array and the function. Now value to be, in this case, the top value in cell G4, comma, and the array is going to be the aggregate, that is the sum of all these values here. And then we need to actually apply absolute cell reference to lock down G4 to G24, so that when we copy the formula down, it doesn't behave as a relative reference. So F4 key once, and that's all. Close the sum function and then comma. Now for the function argument of the scan, we need to throw in the function here. Now the lambda function again requires a parameter. So what I'm going to do is very simple. I just need what is called an accumulator and a value. Now accumulator is the value that will be totaled up, which is going to return the final result. And the value represents each of the value in the element, that is the array we are referencing. Now in this case, I'm going to just use A to represent accumulator, comma, then I'm going to use V to represent value, then comma. Now for my calculation, what I'm going to do is simple. I'm going to just take the accumulator, divide by the value, okay? And then that's all. Close off the lambda, the scan, and that's cool. You can even press F9 to see what the formula is going to be delivering. It's going to be delivering this value. Control Z and Control Enter. Now, the percentage of grand total for the first value, this 95 million plus, is 5.12%. Okay, then we can copy the form that gave us 100%. So you can see that this scan function is useful. Now let's do the same thing with the reduce function. Now the reduce function is designed to operate just like the scan function, but to deliver a single result. But I found out that you can actually use the reduce function to deliver not only a single result, but you can even copy the formula down and achieve the same outcome that we got with the scan function. Now let's do the same thing, equal sign, reduce. Now the reduce function reduces an array to an accumulated value by applying a lambda function to each value and returning the total. Okay, still the same thing, it requires an initial value, which is going to be G4, comma, then we use the sum aggregate function, and then we sum up all this value. Okay, it has to be to this length. F4 key to lock it, close the sum, comma, lambda. Again, we also need and the value. Now, in this case, I'm going to use the same thing, accumulator, divide by the value, close the whole thing, and Control Enter. You can see we achieve the same 5.12%. When we copy the formula down, it gave us 100%, just like what we achieved using the scan function. Now, let's do something different with the scan and the reduce function in this case. Now we want to perform a running total. We're going to do that with the scan function and the reduce. Let's do the scan function first, equal sign, scan. Now in this case, the switch value will not be the cell G4. However, it's going to be 0 because we want to start at the very top, okay? This cell G4. So I'm going to put in 0, comma, and the array is going to be this entire numbers. Then we can copy the formula down. And for the function, I'm going to throw in the Lambda function. And let's use accumulator, comma, and then we also apply the value, comma. Now for my calculation, I'm going to use A, that is accumulator plus the value, okay, each element in the array. Then we can close up the Lambda. Okay, and that gave us the running total. Now this is the first value, which is 95 million plus. Now when you add up 95 million plus 88 million plus, in the status bar we have 184,814,000 plus, and that's exactly what we have here. Now when I select all the total here, you can see that the total is 1,871,840 plus, and that's exactly what the running total we have here as user. Okay, so it is working pretty fine. Now let's use or calculate the same thing and use the reduce, equal sign, reduce, initial value equal to 0, and the array is going to be the same value here. I want to total up. Then for my function, I'm going to train the Lambda function. I want to use accumulator and the value. So it's going to be, the calculation is going to be A plus V, that is accumulator plus value. And we can close up the Lambda and the reduce. Now in this case, it's going to return a single value in our cell, okay? So you can see what's happening. Now we have the total that we had here. So this is what we have. We have 1,840 plus. So this is what reduce function does. It just reduces the whole thing. Instead of having it like this, we just have a single total. And that's how to use the reduce Lambda helper function. Now let's move to something more technical than this. Okay, let me just move on. Okay, now let's move to the map function. Now I love this map function and the make array because they're more technical than the scan, reduce, and the by call and the by row. Now let's see this scenario. We have this, sales data, okay, showing dates, payment method, brand, units, and we have this lookup table to the right of the screen. Now we have the price for each of our brand. For instance, the price for Volkswagen is $460. And we have many transactions for Volkswagen, limousine, and so on. Now, these are the units bought. For instance, we sold on the 26th of December 2001, the 52 units of Honda. That's going to be 52 multiplied by the price, that is by 600, the total sales amount. Now let's do that with the reduce and the map function, equal sign. Now map, let's see what it does. The function returns an array formed by mapping each value in the arrays to a new value by applying a lambda to create a new value. Now this can be confusing or difficult to digest, but I'm going to break it down for us. Now let's see. The function just requires array, lambda, or array2, and so on. Now for my array, I want to actually map this. I want to return this, each of this unique brand, comma. Now I'm going to throw in the function here. Now for my lambda function, I need a single parameter that I'm going to pass into my formula afterwards. I'm going to use something simple. I'm just going to call it my value, comma. Now for my value, I'm going to throw in the let function because I'm going to use this my value parameter more than once. So let. Now for my let, I need to just apply a name. So let me just call down step because I need that in the filter formula of the function. Now comma. Now, what do I need after this? Now, I need to check this many side of brand you equal to my value. Now, this is my value parameter governs the unique brand we have here. So I'm going to say the sales, brand, sales data brand, are you equal to my value? Now, if it is equal to my value, I want to run sum and then use index function as the array parameter. Now, for my index, I need to provide the array. Now, I want to look up this price here, comma. Now, for the row number input value, the argument, I'm going to throw in.
Don't have it on your computer. So.
Oh, yes. Now, yeah. Now, this set of are exclusively available in the beta channel of M365 for Excel. Now, it is actually only available to those who are in the beta channel. And I'm not sure that it's available to everyone in the beta channel, but when it was released on the 26th or 7th or thereabouts, I happen to be one of the people that have access to it. Let's see the version of Office that I have, okay? I have Microsoft 365 app for enterprise, okay? And I am currently in the beta channel. And I think this set of functions are available in this particular build 14509.20,000. So it is only available to some few people for now. The beta channel, you should be able to have it if you don't have it now. So it's not going to get to Microsoft 365. Okay, now some of the or all the dynamic array functions are also available in the M365. However, you can access them if you have access to Excel. For them, always available on Excel for the web. You can use them. Okay, so these functions are only available to some few people, which happens to be one of them. Now let me just recap on what I did here before my internet actually disappointed. Now I said, I'm sure we remember this. We have this sum of this little function calculation based on each of the unique year, and we selected the sum range, which is this amount, and the criteria range 1 is the year, and the criteria 1 is each of these unique value. I said that to calculate the percentage of grand total using the scan function, we can actually do that effortlessly. And let's see how to do that. Equal sign, scan. Okay. Now, in this case, we need to give the initial value. Our initial value is going to be the value in cell G4, comma, and the array is sum of all this value we have here. And then we need to fix this in absolute cell reference so that it doesn't behave relatively. So press F4 key once, comma, or close the sum, and then we are back to the scan, comma. And for the function, I'm going to throw in the Lambda function there. And I said that we need the accumulator. Accumulator is the value to be totaled up, which will ultimately return the final result. And we also need the value. Now the value represents each of the value in the elements, in the array elements. So for my accumulator, I'm going to just use A to represent accumulator, and then V for my value. Then for my calculation, we'll take this, my accumulator, and divide by my value. So A divided by V, and we can close up the Lambda and the scan, and then we can send the report down. So you can see that this 95,892 plus represent 5.12% of the whole results. Then we can copy the formula down, and then we have the 100%. So this is how to calculate percentage of grand total. Scan helper Lambda function. Okay, now we can also do the same thing to calculate the percentage of grand total using the reduce function. Now, the reduce function is designed to return a single value, okay? But in this example now, I'm going to actually use it to give me the same results that I achieved with the scan function. Now, equal sign, reduce. Now, the reduce function reduces an array to an accumulated value by applying a lambda function to each value and returning the total, okay? Now, the initial value remains this value in cell G4, equal sign, comma, and then we use the sum function and we total all the value up inside the sum, add it up rather. That's going to be the array. Now, for the function, throwing in the lambda function. Now, for the lambda function, I need the accumulator and the value. So in this case, my calculation will also be a accumulator divide by the value, and then we can close off the lambda and the reduce, and that returned 5.12%, okay? So we achieve the same outcome. So we have the 100% at this cell. Now, let's now see how to calculate running total using the scan function and also running total using the reduce function. Now, to do this equal sign, just type in the scan. That now the initial value is going to be 0 because we want to start at this point in this cell G4. So just type in 0, comma, and the array is going to be the entire value, the numbers we have here, and then comma. Then we can throw in the lambda function. Again, we need the accumulator and the value, comma. Now for my calculation, in this case, I'm going to use the accumulator and add it to the value. And then we can close up the lambda and the scan. And that gave us the running total. Now we have 95 million plus here, which is the same value here. Now when you add up these two together, 95,892 plus to with 88,922 plus, in the status bar, that will give us 184 million plus. And that's exactly what we have here. 184,814,366. Now, when you add up all this value and check this result in the status bar, we have 1,871,840,489. Now, that's exactly what we have here, 1,871,000 plus. So this is how to use the scan function to perform a running total. Now, we're going to use the reduce function, which returns a single line of item. Now, equal sign, reduce, and initial value remains 0, and we need the array. Now, the array remains this value here, and we can put in a comma. So for the function, we need a lambda function, and then we need the accumulator and the value, comma. Now, the calculation will now be accumulator plus the value, close the lambda, and we can close the reduce. Now you can see that we achieved the same total here. The final total for the scan is 1,871,000 and 1,871,000,000 and so on. And we achieve the same result because the reduce function is arranged or programmed rather to deliver a single value, whereas the scan function delivers multiple results of values. So that's how to use the scan and the reduce lambda helper functions. Now let's proceed to the map. Now, okay, let me just clear what I did here before the network broke out. Now we have this scenario. This is a data set. We have the brand and the units. And in this table to the right, it's going to be our lookup table. And what we want to do essentially is simple. We want to look up for the price for each of this brand, and then the formula will flow into our calculation here and return the sum of the unit for each of the brand and deliver the final answer. Okay, let me just clear this for now. Now let's see how to do that with the map function. Map. Okay, map. Okay, now the map requires an array, and I want to map this entire array in F5 to F16. and comma. Now, for the lambda or the array, I'm going to throw in my lambda function. And in this case, the lambda function requires a single parameter that I'm going to reuse in the formula build-up. Now, in this case, I'm going to use my value parameter and then comma. Then, because I'm going to use this again, I'm going to use the let function inside the lambda function. Okay. Of course, we use the let function to store name, intermediate name, which we can actually reuse over time inside our formula. Now, I need to assign a name here. So I'm going to just use step, which I need later on in the formula builder, comma. Then I'm going to check this brand many side, which is whether it is equal to my value parameter that we defined inside this lambda function here. So I'm going to now throw in or pass in this my value parameter. So it's going to be my value. Okay. Then I'm going to put in a comma. All right. Okay. After that, my value. Okay, comma. Now for my calculation, I need to now write the calculation here. So I'm going to use the sum will require an. Now for the index, I need to provide the array, which is the first argument. So I want to look comma. Now for the row number argument of the index function, I'm going to throw in the. Now, in this case, I need to throw in my value, which is going to represent the lookup value inside my match function. So I want to look up for my value. Now, I want to look up in which of this array. Now, in this brand, unique brand array. And then we want an exact match type. Then we can close off the match. And then we can close off the index. Now we are back to the sum. Then we use the multiplication sign and deploy the filter function. Now the filter function requires an array. So we want to filter this unit price, comma, and the include argument parameter will be this name, the step that we actually assigned inside our let function. So I'm going to just type in step. And that's all we need. Now, the if empty of the filter function is an optional argument, which of course we're going to skip. So we can close off the filter, close off the sum, the let, lambda, and finally the map function. Then we can press F9 to see whether it's going to work. Cool. It's actually working. You can even press Ctrl-Shift-U to expand the formula bar. So you can see the sum, the sales amount for each of the brand, and so on. Ctrl-Shift-U, Ctrl-Z, and Control-Enter. And that gave us the accurate sales amount for each of this brand. Now let's do a quick test in order to be very sure whether these calculations are true or not. Now, in this cell I1, I'm going to run a quick sum ifs. Now, as the sum range, and we want the brand as the criteria range 1, and then the value in cell H1 as the criteria 1. Now, the total units for brand that equals to Mercedes-Benz is 32,570. You can even change. Now, we sold, excuse me, 129,901 unit of limousine. Now, let's quickly do a simple calculation here. Take this value multiplied by the corresponding price for the limousine brand, and that will give us 194,851,500, and that's exactly what we had here, 194,851,500. So the formula is actually working because it flows into, we actually look up this price list and we multiply that with what we filtered in this unit, and then we take all this many side, and that gave us the results. Okay. Now let's move to the make array. Now what I just did here is simple. We have the same data set. I just perform a simple cross tabular report using the sum effects function. Now the goal here is simple. We want to calculate running total across not only a single column, but across multiple columns. And that's more technical than what we have been doing. Now let's do that equal sign here. We're going to use the make array. Now let's see what the function does. Make array returns a calculated array of a specified row and column size. Now the row and the column must be of the same size. That's the key point, by applying a lambda function. Now let's see how to do that. Now it requires just 3 arguments or parameters: the rows, columns, and the function. Now for the rows, I'm going to just use the rows function, okay, because I just want to know how many rows we have here. So let me just select the value in cell G2 and hold down the shift key and press the hash sign. We can close off the rows, comma. So if we try to evaluate by pressing F9, we can see that we have 21 rows in that range, okay? Control Z. Again, we're going to do something similar for the columns. So I'm going to use the columns function, the same value in cell G2, hold down the shift key, press the pound sign, close the columns, comma. Now we can even evaluate and check. We can see that we have 7 columns: FASTPay, MasterCard, all through to Visa card. Okay. Now I'm going to throw in the lambda function. Now in this lambda function, we need 2 parameters, and I'm going to use what I'm going to call row value to handle the row. I'm going to explain further, and the column value to handle the column, okay, comma. Now what I'm going to do next is I need to pass in these things inside my index function. So I'm going to throw in the index function. Now the index function requires an array, and I'm going to throw in the scan, then helper function in there, and the scan function requires for the initial value 0, comma, and the array input value will now be another scan, another index function. So I throw the second index, and in this index, I need to give this value in cell G2, hold down the shift key and press the hash sign and comma. Now for the number of rows, I just want to move nothing, which is 0, just put in 0, comma. Now for the column input value for the array, for the index function, I need to pass in this column value parameter that I defined here. So just type in column value, and we can close off the index, and we are back to the scan. Now we have satisfied this, arguments, and this is the this is the value for this. Okay, now for the put in a comma. Now for the function input value for the scan, I'm going to throw in yet another lambda function. Now the lambda function will now require an accumulator and a value. So in this case, I'm going to use accumulator. Let's type it out. That's not necessary anyway. Comma and the value. Comma. Now for the calculation, I need to now add the accumulator plus the value. So accumulator, and we add it to the value. Okay, and we can close off the lambda function now, and we can close off the scan, and we are back to the index. So all this bunch represents the input value for the index array arguments. Then we need to supply the row number. So comma. Now for the row number, I'm going to pass in this row value defined parameter. Okay, so I'm going to just type in row value and comma. So for the column, I'm just going to put in 1 because I'm not moving any column other than just to remain there. So we can close off the index, close off the lambda, and we can close off. It's working pretty fine. Now this formula can be quite difficult to understand how it works, but let me just explain further. Let me just explain one more time. Now we use rows function here and the columns, and then we use this row value to undo each of the rows and the column value parameter to undo each of the columns, and then we deploy the index function that accepts scan function. That in the scan function we just follow the same rule that we did here. We use 0 as the initial value, And for the array, we also throw in the index function. Now the index function, the second one, takes the entire value that's coming from this data. And then for the rows, we are moving nothing, just putting 0. And then for the column, we pass in this parameter we define inside our Lambda function. We pass that in here. And then we got here, so we need to also throw in the Lambda function, which is the third argument, okay, for the scan function. So Lambda function, and then we use the accumulator and the value in each of the elements, and we add the accumulator plus the value. And then we close off the scan, we close off the Lambda and the scan, and then we are back to the index, the very first index we use here. So we are back to it. So for the row number, we just throw in the row value parameter here, and then we just put in 1 for the column number, and that's all. So we can actually control enter, and it's working pretty fine. Okay, are you there? Okay, I thought my internet is breaking. Okay, good. Okay, thank you. All right, so you can see that we have the final result. And when you check these two together, for example, okay, let's do for this, okay, for FASAPay, we have 793,000 plus and plus 1,769,000. So when we add it up in the status bar, it gave us 2,563,000 plus, and that's exactly what we achieved here, 2,542,000 plus. So that's how to use the make array. It's quite a voluminous function. Let's open the formula. You can even just break it down for easy understanding. Let's just do Alt Enter. Let me just break it down so that we can, get or probably see it better. Sorry, someone is calling me. I don't know why. Okay, and let me break down this. And finally, so this, of course, this is what is possible in Power BI. So you can even do the same thing. Just break the formula down so that it will be more readable and understandable by users. So this is how to use the map, the make array function. Now, let's say we want to achieve the same outcome in PivotTable. How do we do that? Now, let me quickly run through that quickly. So as we know, PivotTable is easy to use. Just click on the Insert tab, click on PivotTable, and we want to dump it in the existing sheet. And for the cell, let me just move up. And let me dump it here, and we can click on Enter. Okay, now this is our PivotTable. Let me scroll to the right of the spreadsheet. Now, what I'm going to do is very simple, just taking this here and drop it inside the rows area. And we want the payment method to be in the columns and the sales amount in the values, which of course perform the aggregation. Now, we can see that we have the same result. Just let me close up this. We have the same result, just like what we had in the calculation we have here. Okay. We have the same result. Now, how do we now achieve this result that we use the make array, that is the running total for multiple columns? How do we do that in PivotTable? That's quite easy, but it may be a bit technical. Now, just come inside the PivotTable. Now, what I'm going to do is very simple. Now, just come to the, you can just right click and let's choose show values as. Now, we want running total in. Now, what's going to give us the running total is the year field. So the running total will be based on the year field, not the payment method. It has to be the year. So when I click on the year now, absolutely cool. Let me just apply number formatting to make it more readable and get rid of the decimals. Now you can see that we have the running total working. Let's take, for instance, okay, we can say perfect money here. Now you can see that the result for the perfect money here in cell T3 is exactly what we achieve here, which is 3,008,000 plus, is exactly what we have in the PivotTable, 3,008,000 plus. So this is how to use a worksheet function, taking advantage of the make array function, and also a PivotTable that is so easy to use. So if the source data changes, of course, the formula result will automatically update. But if the same thing changes in the data set, we need to just right click and refresh our pivot table for it to be updated. So that's how to use the make array Lambda helper function. Now let me go to how to create a Lambda custom function, okay, which is what we had before the release of the helper functions. Now we have the same data set. I want to create a cross tab report, and we're going to use the Lambda function and the let function and also create a custom function. Now let's do that quickly. Now, as we know, we need to assign calculations, names to calculations using the let. Now for name one, I'm going to just use, let me use the brand. So I'm assigning the brand to which value? To this value in cell F2. Now, because I'm going to copy the formula across columns, I need to lock down the column F. So we need mixed cell reference. So I'm going to press F4 key, 1, 2, 3, comma. And for the name tool, not yet my calculation, but name tool, I'm going to assign another name. I'm going to call out DPA for, or PM for payment method. PM for payment method, comma. And what I want to assign, the value I want to assign is the value that is sitting above in cell G1. Again, because I'm going to copy the formula down, technically, I need to lock down the row 1 so that it remains relative and the G1 moves to G to H, I, and so on. So F4 key, 1, excuse me. Okay, I'm going to press F4 key, 1, 2. So we have locked down the row 1. Okay, and then we can put in a comma. Now, I need the third name. I need to assign the third name, and I'm going to call this one calculation, or you can even use whatever you want. Just remember it, comma. Now, my calculation itself, so I'm not going to write my calculation here. So I'm going to use the sum ifs function. Now, the sum ifs require the sum range, which of course we know. The criteria range 1 is going to be, now I'm going to follow this order, brand and then payment method. So I'm going to select this brand, comma, and the criteria 1 is going to be the name that we assigned to brand, which is the brand. Okay, this is what we have assigned. So I'm going to type in the brand, comma, and the criteria range 2 is going to be the many side for the payment method, comma, and the criteria 2 is going to be the name that we assigned to the value in cell G1, and that's going to be DPM, that is the payment method. And that's all we need to do. We can close off the sum ifs and we are back to the lets. Now, the final thing we need to do is to now sum all this value. Now, we can't sum this value alone, but we have to just sum the value based on the name that we assign, which is calculation. So I'm going to just come here and type in sum function, then I'm going to just type in this name that we assign, which is calculation, and that's all. Close off the lets, or you can even close off the let function now. Now it's going to work, but let's apply the Lambda function. Now for the Lambda function, we need 3 parameters that we need to pass in into this our let, and then we can create our custom function. Now for the parameters, I need to follow the order that I have given. Now the first order is brand, followed by payment method, and then calculation. So I'm going to just type in my brand as the first parameter, comma, my PA for payment method, and the third one is my, you can even say my calculation or whatever, but let's say my calc, okay, comma, and then that's all we have, provided the 3 parameters. Now let's go ahead and pass it. That is to replace that with the structured references we have inside our sum ifs. Now the first one is the sys amount. So I'm going to just select this sys amount and it highlights the section. And I'm just going to carefully type in my calc. Okay. Calc. And for the criteria range 1, I'm going to carefully type in my brand. Okay. And for the payment method, which is criteria range 2, carefully type in my PA, and that's all I need to do. Then we can close off the Lambda function. Now, when I deploy Control Enter, it's going to give me the calc error because you can't use the Lambda function just like that inside a worksheet. Okay, we need to actually call the Lambda function inside the worksheet in order to deliver the accurate results. Now, in order to use this function, this formula inside this worksheet, we open another parenthesis, and then in the same order, we give the sales amount, the brand, comma, followed by, brand, followed by payment method, because it has to follow this parameter we specified. Otherwise, it's going to return an error. So the first one is brand, payment method, and my CAC. So this is for the payment method, and the last one is my CAC, which is representing the sales amount. So we can close off the what we used to call the Lambda function to work properly. Now when I control enter, can you see that it gave us the accurate result? Okay, now that means it's working. Now I'm going to put the formula in edit mode and copy this section of the formula only without what we used to call the Lambda function to work. So I'm going to skip all the other these ones that I use open parentheses, and then we can Control C, escape. Now let me delete this. Then we can go ahead and create our custom function that we can reuse across the entire worksheet and the workbook. So let's come here. I'm going to click on Name Manager, and let's click on New. So let me call this one Calculation. Okay, and then let me say my defined. Now this is going to be a comment, just like the screen tips for each of the functions. So my defined custom function. Okay, then we can paste the formula. Just delete down, Control V, and click OK and click Close. Now, all things being equal, I expect it to work pretty fine. Now, let's now use the custom function that we have created. Now, you can see the comment that we provided might define. Oh, I made a mistake here. I type in A. It should be custom. Okay. Now we have the comments showing. Now let's press Tab key and open parentheses, and then we can give the brand. Oh no, there's something wrong. It's use calculation. Oh no, there's something. It's behaving somehow. I need to see. Oh, there's something. No. Let me see. I think something is missing somehow. Calculation. I expect it to be highlighted. Oh, okay, let me quickly Control Z. Let me check it again. Control Shift U, and let me redo that section. Escape. Control Shift U, and we come to the Formulas tab. Click on Name. Okay, let me just create a new one. Let me just call it, special or whatever. Okay, and let's paste the formula. Control V. I expect it to work properly. Okay, equal sign special. Okay, now it's working now, because when I open the parentheses, I should be able to see this highlighted in this light blue color and this ranges. Now it's working pretty fine. So select this brand, the same order, comma, followed by payment method, and followed by the sales amount. And then we can close off the custom function and enter, Control Enter. Can you see it returned the total sales amount for brand that equals to bike and payment method that equals to FastPay. Now, when I copy this formula across and down, it's not going to give me what I wanted. Okay, so what I'm going to do is Control Z, just copy this value, and we select it. Copy it again, Control C, and select the entire range, and Control V, and that return the accurate result. So you can see that our custom special function is working pretty fine. So that's how to use the Lambda function to create a custom function that you can use in your worksheet. Now, let's come to the pivot table, because we want to talk about some pivot tips and tricks. Now, we have the same data set. To create a pivot table is simple. Click on Insert, click on Pivot Table, and then let's put it in the existing sheet and click OK. Now, traditionally, you're going to see your pivot table on this side, okay? But because when I'm building a calculation, it actually blocks my view. So I prefer to move it to the left of my screen, okay? Now, usually I don't like pivot table to be displayed in this layout. I choose another layout entirely. So I'm going to click on this little tool icon. I use field selection and area section side by side. Now, because if I have so many fields here, I can actually see all of them without the need to be scrolling down, okay? So this is the way I use my pivot table, and this is one of the tricks or the tips that we can use when working with pivot table. So you can always move it out. It's very fine. You can always put it wherever you want it. It's cool. Now, let's create something that I love in pivot table, which is what's called show report filter pages. Okay. Now, let me just quickly build a report. Okay, let me come to the design tab. Oh, excuse me. All right. Now in the pivot table, let's do payment method and by sales amount. Okay, let's drop this here. Now you can actually see. Okay, before I do that, I want to talk about something. I don't know whether. Okay, let me check brand and this. Now, okay, now I actually want to say something, and that thing is that whenever you are using pivot table with the whole entire default, you are going to see row number here, but I've actually changed my whole, from the back end. Now let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to come to the file tab, click on options, and in the data tab, in this Excel options, now you can click on edit default layout. Now, by default, you see this report layout in show in compact form. So let me just put it in the way it is by default. So click OK. Now let me delete this pivot table and redo it. Okay, click on insert pivot table. Okay, existing sheets. Let's drop it here. And now let's create brand, total sales by brand. Now can you see that it's showing row labels? So this is the way pivot table behaves by default. Now what you're going to do is to come to the design contextual report tab, and under the layout, choose report layout and choose either the outline, show in outline, or tabular form. By default, it operates compact form. Okay, now assuming you have so many pivot tables you want to create, you have to be changing it one after the other to, let's say, tabular form, which I've now done. But in order to relieve you of that stress, I suggest as a tip to just alter the default setting from the behind. Now come to this file, options, click on data, and click on edit default layout, pivot table layout, and put it in tabular form. You can even change the default for repeat all item labels, and also insert blank line after each item, depending on what is suitable for you. So when you change the whole thing, you do not need, even if you create another pivot table, you do not need to do or to be changing the report layout. Everything will work the way you have already specified in your Excel options. Now let me just create one more. Let me drop this one in rows, payment method, sales amount. Can you see now? I do not need to go ahead and be changing, show in tabular form or to show in compact form. Okay, so this is one of the tips that I want to share in pivot table. Now let me now talk about or quickly show us how to create the show report filter pages, which is one of the hidden gems in pivot table. Okay, now let me just delete this section. Okay, now let's say we have created this brand, the total sales amount by brand. Let's apply number formatting, right click and choose number format, and let's choose currency, get rid of decimals if you don't like me. Click OK. Now we have the total sales amount by each of the brand. Now let's say we want to create the report for just how many years. Let's say we want to create a report for year 2015 to 2020. Now what I'm going to do is simple. I'm going to take this year and drop it inside the filter. Okay, and can you see that we have all the years here? Now I can actually just select the multiple items. Now I don't want all, I just want to do 15 to 20. So I'm going to check 15 to 20. And when I click on OK, you can see that we have filtered the year value that we drop inside the filters function, filters area rather. And now let's create our report in filter pages. Now come to the Analyze tab of the pivot table, and to the far right left of your screen, click on pivot table and click on this option. Now don't click on this option, just click on this little down icon to see exactly what we need. Now, this is the gem we are talking about, show report filter pages. Now, when I click on that, we have this little box. And when I hit on enter, now before I do that, let me just scroll here. Oh, excuse me, I can't move. Now you discover that I do not have any sheets for each of these respective year. When I click on OK now, you discover that Excel has created the report. Okay, let me scroll to the right. A moment. Okay. Okay, can you see now? So we have report for 2015. That is the total sales amount by brand for the year 2015. We have for 2016 that we can consume 2017, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so this is one of the gems that we have in PivotTable because it allows you to have independent reports in each of the sheets for the value you drop inside the filters. Now, as you need to know, let me just come back to the pivot table here. Now, by definition, you can see this for your information. Okay. Now you can see that you can double click a value to see which detailed values make up the summarized total. Now, this FYI for your information is that, let's see, you want to see all the value that makes up the total sales amount for buy, which is 4,114,000 plus. Just double click and a new sheet is automatically generated for you. And we have the report here. Now, if you want to verify, just select the system amount. You can see that we have, let's apply currency. That is 4,114,106, which is exactly what we have here. Can you see 4,114,106? So that is how to use, that's part of the pivot table. Now let me scroll to the right. Okay, now finally, let me just talk about this Power Query data type, which I believe many of us may have. It is also available in the beta channel. Okay, now we have this data already, and let me just use a small data so that it will work faster. Delete this. Okay. Now let's say we have this sizable data, and we want to collapse this data to column. We can actually achieve that using the Power Query data type. Now, this data must be formatted as an Excel table because you can't load that into the Power Query except you have it in tables. Okay, aside from other measures. Now, having formatted your data as an Excel table, you can come to the data tab of the ribbon, and under the get and transform, we have from sheet. Now, this from sheet replaces the old from table / range. So just click, and then the data will be loaded into the Power Query, and we can create our custom function. So I hope we have questions. If you have questions, just continue to type it in the comments so that we can take all the questions after the end of this presentation. Now, this data is in the Power Query, and let's just do a simple transformation. Let's just make this to be proper date data type. So I choose date, and then want to replace. I don't need to install, add a step, just replace. And the magic is, let's say we want to use our brand as the single column that we're going to all the columns beneath. Just right click and choose create data type. Or you can even come to the transform group here, transform tab, and to the far right of your screen under the structured column, click on create data type. And then we have this create data type box, dialog box coming up. Now we want to do advanced because we have more than one column. Now you can actually, give name for your data type, and the display column will be. Now I'm just going to select all this value, the first, column, hold down the shift key and select the last one, which is the sales amount. So we have highlighted all of them, and then we can click on add. So they are now added to the selected column, and that's all we need to do. Click OK, and the whole thing has been collapsed from multiple columns, excuse me, to a single column, and then we can load it back to Excel and consume the report. So click on Home, Click on close and load. We want to close and load to a table in the existing sheet. And let me just pick this cell and drop it here. Okay, that's amazing. So we have the multiple columns which we had here collapsed to a single column. Then let's say we want to extract the payment method column. That's so easy to do. So just select, click on this little card, and we can actually select the column we want. Now let's say we want to do the payment method. Just click on this plus icon, to extract payment method to grid, that is to the cells, and that is cool. We have it extracted from this column that we padded the other columns beneath. Let's say you want to add sales amounts, just click on that, and it's working pretty fine. You can apply currency formatting. We want to get the year. So everything is working pretty fine. So this is essentially how we use the new Power data types, and we have done justice to the new Lambda helper function, the by call, the by row, scan, reduce, map, make array, and also we talked about the how to create Lambda custom function and how to use or do some things on PivotTable, like how to perform filter, report filter pages, and so on. So I hope we've been able to get one or two new things in this presentation. Mr. Mike, if you're there, over to you now.
Yeah, so we're able to do that. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Okay.
But someone was wondering,
okay,
to see during the presentation, just during the filter pivot table, your screen was lagging a bit, and someone was wondering if you could maybe take that part again.
Oh,
yeah, just the filter.
Okay. Oh, so sorry. Okay. Sorry. I actually supposed to swipe to that screen. Okay. This is. Let me just go back to that section. Okay. I think this is what we're talking about. Let me just. Yes. Okay. Now the final report. Okay. Now I'm going to double click on the. Okay. Excuse me. Just double click on this result, the query, and it's open to Power Query. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Let me just redo that step so that we can actually have a good understanding. Now, click inside data tab, click on From Sheet, and the Power Query editor opens. Now, okay, let me swipe the sharing to this new Power Query. Okay, moment. Okay. So can you please see my Power Query display? Hello?
No.
Yes, I can see it now. I can see it now.
Okay, you can see it now.
Power Query text there we are seeing, or fine, you see Power Query text.
Okay, no, I can see it.
I think you.
Let me stop.
Are you using two screens?
If you can share the, fine, if you can help us just fish out your link. So we
yes, I'm going to do that. Okay. So let me just type.
Okay, if it won't take you time to go, but if it take you time, won't stress you too much, we can try.
Okay.
But it's been a lot of things you covered for us today.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, let me just tidy things up. Just a moment. All right. So I'm going to drop the link, and I believe we're going to see it. So let me just put it here back. But I'm sure you can see my Excel now, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is just the final output of what I'm trying to show us in the pivot table. Okay, so we have created, a single column out of the multiple columns we had, and then you can actually select each of the value, each of the column. Click on this add column, and let's say we want to choose. We want to choose date. The date will automatically comes up, and let's say we want to choose sales amount for each of the respective brand we have here. So everything is working fine. So this is how to use the Power Query data types. Over to you, Mr. Mike.
Thanks a lot, and it's a pleasure. I'm sure people have gained a lot. We're very, very happy. So I will just hand over again back to Ifeanyi to wrap up the session. For today, for as regards giveaway, I think we had used up the giveaway we got. But okay, we can give one. Should I just try and do something that will make us get a prize winner and then we'll wrap up the session then? Because we have to go and start the one for Power BI. Okay, maybe I'll just pick that as a yes. So, Mr. Dave, sir, so just
Yes, sir.
we need you to help us with a small question. And the first person to answer correctly will be our winner for today's session. So,
Okay.
answer has to be typed. So the rule is for the participants, they must type the answer in the chat box.
Okay.
So that
Okay, are you ready?
experience. So the first person who gets it will be our winner. So, sir, what's the question you want to ask? That
First one is, what is the name of Microsoft? Okay, now the question is, what is the name, now the accurate name of Microsoft CEO? The name of Microsoft CEO.
Okay, so your time starts now, all the participants. First person to get it right becomes our winner for today's edition. So, I don't know if you can see the chat, Mr. Dave.
Okay, let me check the chat.
You can even stop sharing so that it won't cover your screen too much.
Okay, yeah, I'm stopped. Okay. Okay, I'm checking the chat now.
In case the moment you see a correct answer.
Yeah, I've cited one.
You cited help us to like the correct answer, the first answer.
Okay.
So we'll use the person as our winner.
Okay, the person is, okay, let me just reply. Hold on. Omoaregan Jerry.
Great. So, Mr. Jerry, please just email us. I'm going to send what's in the chat message. Okay, great. My colleague Ifeanyi has sent the email address. So please just email us at webinar@UrBizEdge.com and we will give you. So the price for today is coming from us. It's our Excel online course. So that's the price for today.
Okay.
Next week can be different. Last week I think it was something different. It was something from Midnight Tracy. So we get different price from different sponsors. But today is coming from us and our Excel course. So we're going to get you free access to our Excel course. So thank you very, very much. And so to our special guest, MVP David Abiola, we are very, very grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And for you took your time to teach us. So it wasn't like, even me, I was like, this is the best explanation of by column and by row that I've gotten. So now I'm no longer afraid by some of those numbers. Other people say they have to wait till it comes to their own PC, but they can always watch the recording when they finally have it on their own PC. So we are very, very, very grateful, and we have to sign off at this moment. So Ifeanyi, do you announce the things as regards, I think maybe I can do it faster anyway. Please help us to do the feedback form. For those who want to watch the recorded session, you will also see the links that we'll be sharing. Ifeanyi, my colleague, has been sharing the links. You can give us your feedback, recommendation of topic, of speakers. We will be very, very grateful. And do look us up at UrBizEdge.com. Check the YouTube for the recordings. And we are very grateful to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And
thank you. Bye-bye.
In 30 minutes, we also
have
another session. In 30 minutes.
Bye. Bye to everyone.